All right, Rambam Sefer Misvot Aseh, positive commandment, up to number Kuf, head number 108. We're in the middle of that actually. We just listed a total of, Rambam's going to summarize to us, 13 types of Tum'ah that is a Misvot Aseh. It's a positive commandment that when someone contracts those types of impurity, to follow the protocol and the procedure as prescribed by the Torah. And now the Rambam, so we're going to pick up from the second line in Mizvah Kov Het, the last type of Tum'ah, actually the last Mizvah was purifying with using the Menidah, which is the Efer Paraduma, mixed with the water in order to purify someone who is Tameh. And now the Rambam, the second line from the word Da, is going to give us a summary, followed by some nice sources in Torah Shebechtav and Torah Shebe'al Peh for these laws of Tum'ah. V'da ki elu shlosha asar minin men hatum'ot shekadam minyanam. You should know that the 13 types and categories of Tum'ah that we just listed, now he'll list them again for you in a much briefer, itemized way. Vehem Tum'at nebela ushrasim ve'ochalim u'mashkim v'tum'at nida v'yoledet v'sara'at adam v'sara'at begadim v'sara'at batim v'tum'at zav v'zaba v'shechvat zera v'tum'at met u'menida. I'm not going to redefine and translate that list because we already did. All 13 of those are mentioned over the course of many pesukim in the Torah, vidinim v'tanaim, and many laws and conditions, k'moshe katuv beparashat vahi b'yom hashemini uparashat tazriya v'zot tihiyeh uparashat paraduma. So the 4 parashiyot, first one's obviously Parashat Shemini. Second one's obviously Parashat Tazriah. The third one, Zot Tihiyeh, is referring to Parashat Mesorah, where it says Zot Tihiyeh Torah HaMesorah B'Yom Tahorato, and Parashat Para'aduma is Parashat Chukat. Ve'elu ha'arba' parashiyot yichlelu ketuvim elu ha'temeot kulam. So in these 4 parashiyot will incorporate all of the pesukim relevant to that entire list of Misvot of Tum'ah. Omnam dineh haminim ha'elu kulam v'dikduk kol min mehem seder taharot kolel kol zeh. But regarding Torah Shebe'al Peh, the specifics of all of these categories of Tum'ah, all the specific laws, can be found in which Masechet? Well, first of all, in Seder Taharot. There are 6 Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, 6 orders and groupings of Mishnah. The last and the largest by far is called Seder Taharot. In the various Masechtot and Seder Taharot, you can find all these laws of Tum'ah, all those categories. Now, the Rambam is going to do something wonderful for us, which is he's going to take us through a tour of Seder Taharot and what various Masechtot are cover, or which types of Tum'ah you can find in which Masechtot in Seder Taharot. So here we go. Masechet Taharot Machshirin Ve'uksin Elu Shalosh Masechtot Kolelot Tum'at Ochalim Bilvad. So it happens to be that in Seder Taharot, there's a specific Masechet called Masechet Taharot, right? There's a specific Masechet in Seder Taharot called Masechet Taharot. So that Masechet and Masechet Machshirin and Masechet Oksin, all of those 3 Masechtot include all the laws of Tum'ah food. V'lahem hem mechubarim ומה שנמשך מהם מזיכרון דין מדיני טומאות אחרות אומנם בא בהם ממקרה. And any other laws of Tum'ah not regarding teme'ah of food that's extended from them are there coincidentally, he says. In other words, the main topic of those three masechtot is impurity of food. וכן מסכת נידה כוללת דיני זב וזבה ושכבה זרע. So Masechet Nida, which is in Seder Tahorot, incorporates three on the list, three types of tum'ah, which besides Nida, Zav, Zava, and Shechva Zera. Masechet Aholot kolelet Dinei Tum'at Met. That's the home of the laws of Tum'at Met, a long 18-chapter Masechet called Masechet Aholot. Masechet Para kolel Menida l'Tameh u'Taher. Masechet Para, which is the first of Para Aduma, incorporates the laws of the sprinkling of the ashes of Para Aduma. It's called Menida, waters of purity. Whether that, as he explained, that which it purifies certain people and impurifies other people. Umnam Tumat Nebelot, Tumat Sheres, Tumat Sheres, Lo nityaher lehem Masechet, aval dinehem ufuzarim avmut rabim ma'aseder hazeh. However, the tum'ah of two of those in the list of 13 of sheres of a rodent or nevelot of carcass does not have a specific home as a masechet as a home for them, but rather they are dispersed in a number of other masechtot, mostly in Seder Tahorot. V'rov zeh b'masechet Kilim v'Tahorot, and most of it, Masechet Kilim is the biggest masechet in Shas, 30 pirakim. So a lot of that is in Kilim and some in Masechet Tahorot. V'chen deberu al she'elot rabot me'elu ha'anyanim b'masechet Eduyot. So the separate masechet, which is in Seder Nezikin, called Eduyot, but which many of the issues of Tum'ah are touched upon as well. Uchvan perashnu zeh haseder bechlalo, kilomad Seder Tahorot, perush lo yistarech imol anyan sefer acher shum. And we already gave our Perush, the Rambam's referring to his commentary. It's called Perush Mishnayot, the Rambam's commentary on Mishnah. And specifically, I discussed in Seder Tahorot all what's necessary regarding the ins and outs of Tum'ah and Tahorah. He says, you don't need another book besides my book. Once you read my commentary to Seder Tahorot, you're good to go. It's all you need. All right, Misvot Koftet number 109. Hisha Sivanu, Shinitbol. So now obviously we're still on the track of Tum'ah and Tahorah. Hisha Sivanu, Shinitbol, B'mei Mikveh. Vaz Nitaher Me'ezemi Nemine Tum'ot Shinitmeu Ba. The Misvah of immersing in the waters of a mikveh, and then will be purified from many of the types of Tum'ah that we've just listed. V'hu amaroyit barach, the source in the Torah for this is V'rahas Bamayim. Elsewhere it says V'rahas Besro Bamayim. He just mentioned that two-word source for now. U'ba'a Kabbalah, and we know through tradition of Torah Shebe'al Peh, when it says Mayim, Shekol Gufo Ale Bahem, V'hu Shi'od Mikveh. When it says immerse in water, what does it mean? It means water that can incorporate your entire body, which is, and he's not saying how much yet, the amount of water of a mikveh, unless it's flowing, natural flowing water that does not have a specific volume. As it is explained wherever you find the laws of this Misvah. Among the conditions of this law, second, shehazab bilvad yihiyu hamayim sheyitar bahem nov'im, k'mo sheba b'torah mayim hayim. Only specifically one type of tumah of the zab, the person that has the emission, seminal emission, he only has purity in flowing waters. Because the Torah specifically says regarding the zav, mayim hayim. V'ena kavana b'ma'amar tabila mizvat asher sheyeh hayav kol tameh sheyetara kol panim. So, and don't think my intention is when I say that it's a positive commandment to dip in the waters of the mikveh. it means that you're obligated when you're tameh to dip in those waters. Like someone who's wearing a four-corner garment has to put susiyot on the corners. Or anyone that has a house with a porch has to put a roof, has to put a fence where it's circumstantial. That's not the case over here. Not everyone who's tameh has to dip in the mikveh. So what do I mean that it's mizvat aseh? Ve'ulam hanirsa bazeh din tebila v'hiyot haTorah omeret lanu ki mi shirseh letaher b'tumato hine lo yishlam lo zeh ela b'tfilah b'mayim v'az yitaher. So what do I mean by the mizvah of immersing? That the Torah says, listen, when you decide to purify from your tum'ah, so the only way to complete that process in whatever respective tum'ah we're talking about, you can't evade it, you can't bypass it, is immersing in mayim tehorim in the mikveh. So that's what I mean. And then you perform a positive commandment. Then it's a mizvat aseh. Right? So it's not something that you're ever imposed upon you, unless, of course, you have to bring a korban, let's say. All right, then you have to get your act together. But otherwise, there's no obligation to purify from your impurity. It's just a mitzvah when you decide to do so. Then you're performing a mitzvah. And that is a necessary part of the process of purity. The Lashon Sefer, the Midrash says, V'rahas b'mayim, analyzing those two words in the Torah, and he shall rinse literally in water. Yachol gezerat melech. Does this mean that the Torah imposes upon you, the king, which is Hashem, the Torah imposes this upon you? You must dip in water. It says in the pasuk, and then he'll come into the encampment, meaning because of the impurity that he had, meaning that when he wants to come into the camp here is Machaneh Shekhinah, to come to the Bet HaMikdash, the Azara, for instance, the Bet HaMikdash, then when you go through the process of rahas b'mayim, of immersing in water, then you're released from your tum'ah state. So, but meaning that the Midrash is telling us it wasn't a command of rahas b'mayim. Romez el zeh hashoresh shebi'arnu ki hu din levad shekol mi shirseh lo taher ya'aseh kach v'zo adin hu ha'mitzvah. And this hints exactly what we've mentioned. That's only a mitzvah for he who wants to purify himself. But it's not obviously, as we just explained thoroughly, that it's not a constant obligation. Someone who wants to remain tameh and not enter into God's encampment, not enter in the confines of the Bet HaMikdash, he may. As long as he wants, as long as he has to bring a korban, let's put it that way. If he's a kohen, as long as he has duty, as long as he doesn't become tameh met, then he has to only purify himself when he's on duty. And another midrash in the Sefer explained, ha'emet shekol mi shenitma v'yidbol shu nithar. A very important fact that yes, mei mikveh is the last step of whatever respective tum'ah we're talking about, but is not completely tahor until the sun goes down, until it's night. So you may dip during the day, but you have to wait till night to be completely tahor. וכן בא בפירוש המקובל שצריך שיטבול וגופו ערום. Other things we know from tradition regarding the mei mikveh, when you dip, you have to be without any clothing, nogea b'shetach hamayim, contacting the surface of the water completely. Shelo yeh davar chosez bino ben hamayim, and nothing should be separating. It's called the hasisa, between you and the water. Hinen etpa'er lecha mizvazo, v'hi mizvat tevilah. And so now you understand that this mitzvah of immersing includes all the standards for mikveh and the laws of dipping and the laws of someone who's called tibul yom, who's tameh just for the day, all included in the Misvah of the mikveh. Misvah zo mevu'eret b'masechet mikvaot. Obviously, masechet mikvaot doesn't say the tahorot. U'masechet tibul yom as well. Let's stick in one Misvah, one more. Misvah Kof Yod number 110. Hi shesivanu shetihiyeh tahora min hasara'at k'maaseh hakatuv. That we have Misvah, besides the fact that it's a Misvah, that there's a Misvah to follow the protocol of the Tum'ah of someone who contracts Sara'at, there's a Misvah to follow the specific instructions of the Torah in the process of purity, as the procedure explained, described by the Torah and the Pesukim. Vehu es erez ve'ezov b'shni tolat u'shtei sipurim hayot u'mayim hayim. This is the list of ingredients you have to have if you want to become tahor from Sara'at, which is a cedar tree and a hyssop wood and a crimson thread and two live birds, and mayim hayim, which means the water is drawn from the well in the Beit HaMikdash. V'shi'aseh bahem kol ma shene'emar, and follow all the instructions in the Torah. U'bazeh ma'aseh be'asmo yitaher ha'adam k'mo she'ba'er ha'katuv. And only with this procedure can the Mesorah become tahor, as the Torah describes. Hinei kevar itpa'elecha kol minei ha'devarim ha'taharim min ha'tum'ah shloshah minim. Now, that mitzvah is over for the time being. And the Rambam goes back to a summary mode, and he says, now you can see from our discussions here on Tum'ah that there are three types of species, so to speak, or tools that can cause tahorah from Tum'ah. Ehad kolel, one is an all-encompassing general tool, and two are specific and unique to certain types of tum'ah. Umnam hakolel, what's the overriding general one? That's memikveh, as we just explained. That is relevant to all types of tum'ah. V'hamin hasheni menida. The second tool of tahorah is waters of the paraduma. That is specific only to someone who became impure because of a deceased body, of a deceased human being, and that is that purity is only through the menidah, the waters of purity of the Ever Paraduma. That's the second tool of tahorah. The third is what we just described in this previous misvah of the purity of Sara'at. That unique to only the Mesorah, or that hard list of ingredients of the cedar and the hyssop and the thread and the birds and the water. So those are the three tools: one general, relevant to all types of tum'ah, and two specific to tum'at met and tum'at sara'at. The home for the laws of the tum'ah and tahorah of the Mesorah is also in Seder Taharot and in Masechet called Masechet Nega'im. Not called Masechet Sara'at, called Masechet Nega'im. Amen ve'amen.